Good evening, everybody. We are going to be reading a new book, or starting a new book today for our chapter book story time. I've decided to read Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is an abridged version. I was trying to decide if we should read the original unabridged, that means not changed or shortened version, but I think that this one is a really good version. It has some pictures pretty frequently as we read that I will show you, and it will contain all of the important good stuff, but it'll make it a little bit less difficult to understand and a little bit shorter for our purposes in reading for these chapter book storytime videos. So this is the Great Classics for Children publishing version. And again, this is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Okay. Chapter 1. The Old Sea Dog. The squire and the doctor have asked me to write all I remember of Treasure Island, from the beginning to the end. I am to put everything except where the island is located, for there is still treasure there, not yet found. I will go back to the beginning, to the time when my father owned the Admiral Benbow Inn. It was then that the old brown seaman with the scar across his cheek came to stay with us. I remember him as if it were yesterday. He came through the inn door with a large sea chest on a cart. He was a tall, strong, heavy man with nut brown skin. He had a greasy black pigtail that hung down onto his dirty blue coat. His hands were ragged with black broken nails, and across his right cheek ran a saber-cut scar. A dirty, livid white. I remember him looking around the coastline and whistling to himself. Then he sang out in a high, cracked voice an old sea song. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. He stared out at the cliffs and at our signboard. This is a handy cove, he said to my father. A good place for an inn. Do you have much business, mate? No, not much company, replied my father, which is a shame. Well then, he said, this is the place for me. I'm a plain man. Rum and bacon and eggs is all I want, and that room up top to watch for ships. You just call me captain, and you'll be wanting these. He threw down 3 or 4 gold pieces on the table. Tell me when I owe you more. He spoke like a man who was in charge. Here's a picture of the 2 men speaking. So, who is narrating this story? Who is telling this story? Right? The character in first person, that means you say I and me, right? The character in first person is going to be the son of the man who owns the inn. We don't know his name yet, do we? We'll see. His clothes were in bad shape. He used rude language. Yet he did not seem like a regular sailor. He seemed more like a commander that was used to being obeyed and would punish swiftly. He was a very silent man. All day he walked around the cove or out on the cliffs with his brass telescope. All evening he sat in a corner of the parlor next to the fire and drank strong rum and water. Mostly he would not speak, even when we spoke to him. He would just give mean looks and blow through his nose like a foghorn when anyone was around. Folks that stayed in the inn soon learned to leave him alone. Here he is walking around the cove with his telescope. Excuse me. Every day, when he came back from his walk, he would ask if any of us had seen any seafaring men. At first we thought he was just looking for some company and news of the sea. But when sailors did come to stay at the Admiral Benbow, he would peek through the curtained door before he would enter the parlor, and was always as quiet as a mouse around them. By then we'd realized that he was indeed trying to avoid them. One day he took me aside. He promised me a silver coin every month if I would only keep a secret. I was to watch and let him know if a seafaring man with only 1 leg appeared. Often when I asked him for my silver coin each month, he would only blow through his nose at me and stare me down. Before the week was out, however, he would pay me and order me again to look out for the seafaring man with 1 leg. You can just imagine how that one-legged man haunted my dreams. On stormy nights, when the wind shook the house and the surf roared up the cliffs, I would picture that one-legged man. First, the leg would be cut off at the knee, then at the hip. Then he was like a monster that only had the one leg, but in the middle of his body. To see him leap and run and chase me over hedges and creeks was the worst of nightmares. I was terrified of this one-legged man, but everyone else in the inn was afraid of the captain himself. He told dreadful stories about hanging and walking the plank, and storms at sea, and wild deeds in places on the waters of the Spanish Main. If he thought someone was not listening, he would slap his hand on the table for silence. His actions and his language shocked our guests. Many a time he would sit with his rum and sing his wicked wild sea songs. Then he would call for a round of drinks and force anyone in the room to listen to his stories or join him in a chorus. Our poor guests would tremble and join in for dear life. My father was always saying the inn would be ruined, for people would soon stop coming by. But I believe that our guests rather liked him. This was fine excitement in our quiet country life. Some of the younger men called him a true sea dog and a real old salt. In one way, however, he did ruin us. He stayed so many months that he owed us money, and my father was too afraid to ask him for it. He lived in terror of the captain. I'm sure this is what made my father sick and led to his early, unhappy death. Only one time did someone cross the captain. My father was very ill, and Dr. Livesey came one evening to attend to him. Before he left, he waited in the parlor for his horse to be brought around. How different the neat, bright doctor looked from that filthy, heavy, blurry-eyed sea dog. Suddenly the captain began to pipe up his song. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. Dr. Livesey did not seem impressed with this drunk, dirty singer. He kept talking to Taylor, the gardener. The captain slapped his hand upon the table for silence. The voices stopped at once, all but Dr. Livesey's. He went right on speaking, clear and friendly. The captain glared at him, slapped his hand again, and glared still harder. Finally he roared, "Silence there, matey!" Here's a picture. The captain in the background, and here these two still talking. "You're speaking to me, sir," said the doctor. "Aye, matey." "Well then, I've only one thing to say to you, sir," replied the doctor. "If you keep on drinking rum, you will have a stroke, and the world will be rid of a very dirty scoundrel." The captain sprang to his feet. He pulled out and opened a sailor's clasp knife. Dr. Livesey did not budge. He said very calmly, "Put that knife in your pocket this instant. If you do not, I promise upon my honor, you shall hang." The two men had a battle of looks, but the captain soon knuckled under. He put his weapon away and sat down, grumbling, like a beaten dog. "Now, sir," said the doctor, "I'm not just a doctor, I'm a county officer. If I catch one word against you, I'll have you hunted down and forced out of this county." Soon after, the horse arrived, and Dr. Livesey rode away. The captain held his peace that evening, and for many evenings to come. We are going to continue on with Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called Black Dog. That winter was bitter and cold, with long, hard frosts and heavy winds. My poor father was so ill that we feared he would not live to see the spring. Every day he grew worse. My mother and I had our hands full with the inn, and we paid very little attention to our rough guest. One January morning, a frosty gray morning, the captain got up quite early. He set out down the beach with his hat tilted back upon his head. His sword was swinging under his old blue coat, and his brass telescope was under his arm. I remember that his breath hung in the air like smoke as he walked off. Mother was upstairs with father, and I was setting the breakfast table. The parlor door opened, and a man stepped in that I had never seen before. He was a pale, flabby man, missing 2 fingers on the left hand. He wore a short sword, but he did not look much like a fighter. I was on the lookout for seafaring men, with 1 leg or 2, and this one puzzled me. He did not look like a sailor, and yet he had a smack of the sea about him, too. He sat down and asked for rum, but before I could go, he said, "Come here, sonny." I took a step nearer. Is this here table for my mate Bill? He snarled. I don't know a Bill, I said. I'm setting the table for someone who goes by Captain. Does he have a cut on one cheek? On his right cheek? Ah, he has. Well now, is my mate Bill in this here house now? I told him he was out walking. Which way, sonny, which way is he gone? I told him that the captain would return soon. Ah, he said, Bill will be very happy to see me. I did not think this would be the case, but what could I do? The stranger kept hanging about, like a cat, waiting for a mouse. Here's a picture of the two, the boy and the man in question, with the missing fingers. Here's my old mate Bill now, he said after some time with a spyglass under his arm. You and me will just go back into the parlor, sonny. We'll give Bill a little surprise, we will. The stranger backed me into the parlor and hid behind the open door. I was very uneasy and alarmed, as you may imagine. The stranger had his hand on the hilt of his sword. At last, in walked the captain. He slammed the door behind him and marched straight across the room to where his breakfast awaited him. Bill, said the stranger in a bold voice. The captain spun round to face us, and he turned pale. He looked as though he'd seen a ghost. I felt sorry to see him look so old and sick. Come, Bill, you know me. You know an old shipmate, Bill Shirley, said the stranger. The captain made sort of a gasp. Black Dog! And who else, said the man. Black Dog come to see his old shipmate Billy Bones at the Admiral Benbow Inn. Ah, Bill, we've seen some times, us two, since I lost them 2 claws. He held up the hand missing the 2 fingers. Look here, said the captain, you found me. Here I am, so speak up. What do you want? I'll have a glass of rum for this dear child here, or from this dear child here, said Black Dog, and we'll sit and talk over old times. I brought in their rum and then retreated back into the parlor. I tried hard to listen. Here they are talking. While they share their glass of rum, huh? I tried hard to listen, but I heard only low mumbling. But at last the voices began to grow louder, and I could pick up a word or two, mostly curses, from the captain. No, 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 and an end of it, he cried at once. If it comes to hanging, hang all, I say. Then all of a sudden there was a lot of noise. The chair and the table went over, and there was a clash of steel and a cry of pain. The next instant I saw Black Dog run from the inn. The captain was right behind him. Both men had their swords drawn, and Black Dog had blood running down his left shoulder. At the door, the captain lifted his sword for one final blow, but his sword hit our inn signboard, and there it stuck. You can see the notch in our sign to this day. Here you can see a picture of Black Dog running here, holding his shoulder, injured, and the sword hitting the sign. That blow was the last of the battle. Black Dog disappeared over the hill in half a minute. The captain stood staring at the signboard like a confused man. He passed his hand over his eyes a few times. Then he turned back into the house. Jim, he said, bring me rum. He staggered a little and fell against the wall. Are you hurt? I cried. Rum, he repeated. I must get away from here. Rum. I ran to fetch it, but I was very shaken. Then I heard a loud fall in the parlor. I ran back in and found the captain lying on the floor. At the same instant, my mother, who had heard all of the noise, came running downstairs to help me. We raised his head. He was breathing very hard, but his eyes were closed. His face was a horrible color. Oh, dear, cried my mother. What an awful thing to happen in our house, and your poor father sick upstairs. We had no idea what to do with the captain. We were quite relieved when Dr. Livesey came in on his visit to my father. Oh, doctor, we cried, what shall we do? Where is he wounded? Wounded? Fiddlestick, said the doctor. He's not wounded. The man has had a stroke, just as I warned him. Now, Mrs. Hawkins, go back upstairs to your husband, but don't tell him anything about this. I'll do my best to save this fellow's worthless life. The doctor ripped up the captain's sleeve to check his veins. The captain's arm was tattooed in several places, and after a bit, the captain opened his eyes and looked about him. First he recognized the doctor and gave him a frown. Then he looked at me. He tried to raise himself, crying, "Where's Black Dog?" "There's no Black Dog here," said the doctor. "You've had a stroke, just as I warned you. Come now, I'll help you to your bed." Here's a picture of the doctor and the mother and her son watching on. We managed to help him upstairs, and we laid him on his bed. "Now, listen to me," said the doctor. "If you keep drinking rum, you will die. Do you understand that? Die." And with that, he went off to see my father, taking me with him by the arm. "He should lie for a week where he is," he told me. "That's the best thing for him and you. But another stroke will kill him." Well, that's where we get to end our reading for today. We'll continue on with chapter 3 tomorrow night. Hope you guys enjoy your evening, and we will see you then. Bye.